Hey guys, what's up? My name is Jenna and I'm here in Oklahoma City at the Criterion with the wonderful Austin Rolla. If you don't know Austin, he is a very cool concert photographer. Actually, you're the first photographer that I've ever interviewed, so it'll be an adventure.
Nice. This is the very first one.
I'm usually interviewing like authors and stuff, but I was like, I want to branch out, talk to more people, so should be interesting. But for people who don't really know who you are, what is like a really brief like elevator pitch? Like, who is Austin Rolla?
Oh man. I guess in a super basic cable term, a tour photographer and filmmaker.
Cool.
Like just like just straight up generic. Like that's like what I do.
And I think I saw that you started in like film and you just recently got into photography.
Yeah. So film, filmmaking and making videos have always kind of been like a starting point for me, especially like way back when I was like 10 or 11. I always wanted to make movies and things like that. And it wasn't until when I was like 19 or so when I discovered, like the world of concerts and festivals and like the whole music industry or whatever. When I saw people with cameras sort of in the pit and whatever, I was like, oh wow, like that's a thing. Like you can do that for a living. That's a job. So yeah, I had always just from there I was kind of drawn to it, and it wasn't until like after I graduated college where I was still very persistent in trying to pursue the idea of going on tour. But in order to really do that, I needed to learn how to take photos because I was only doing video at the time. So so about 2 years ago, I started taking photography more seriously and specifically concert photography. So that's kind of where like I tell people, like it wasn't until about like 2 years ago where I really started getting into photos.
Why concert photography and not like other photography? Or is there just like that just happened?
Honestly, I'll tell you like a very brief and blunt answer. I mean, my whole goal was to, tour with artists and bands and make these like episodical tour docs out of the tours, which is what I'm doing now. But in order to sort of get to that level, you need to make yourself a little bit more available. Like, hey, like what else can you do? So, like a year ago, I was like, oh, like I can take photos or I can do your merch. And basically I was doing anything that I could to get myself in the position that I could to where I could like work up to where I am now, if that makes sense.
So do you ever do like regular photography?
It's such a rare occurrence if I do regular photography. Like I like, okay, so last summer I shot my friend's wedding and I was like, but he's a very close friend of mine, and he's a drummer in a band he's a drummer in a band, this band called Sad Cops that I've, they're like some of my best friends back at home. And he's like, oh, like, you do all of our video stuff, you should just shoot at my wedding. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And it wasn't until like the actual wedding day where I was like, oh my God, like I have no idea, like I don't know what I'm doing, but let me try my best. And I think I took like 5,000 photos that day. Like it was ridiculous.
That's weddings for you. They're a whole nother beast, honestly. So what was the first concert that you actually like remember shooting, whether that's like professionally or just like for fun?
Oh man.
Or do you not remember? Because that's also valid.
Like video was when I was like 19 when I sort of first met this artist by the name of Robert DeLong who I had toured with last year, and that was just me just shooting video on my camera like from the crowd or whatever. But actual photography for a show, it was honestly, I didn't sincerely start shooting concert photography until after I graduated and I come back home and I was doing like house shows. That's when I first started to like my attempt at taking photos like at those shows.
And house shows are like totally different.
Yeah,
from, like,
it's
big
so
venues.
different. It's such a different vibe. And even then I was still like really focusing on video, but I knew I was like I should take a few photos here and there and try to get a little bit better at it. And that's kind of where I remember like starting, and I remember the photos were so bad, like awful. But I would say house shows.
Is there anybody like super memorable from those house shows that you're like, this artist?
Sure. So the band that I mentioned earlier, this band called Sad Cops, those guys were like my best friends, and that was kind of the first band that after I graduated I'd become friends with them, and I wanted to just shoot everything with them and do these videos with them and shoot photos for them, and that was kind of like the one. Like, exactly. Like the one where I grew really close with them and did like a lot of their content.
Is there a show that's like to date like the best show that you've shot?
Oh wow, what a great question. Holy crap, that's such a good question, actually. Ooh, you stumped me there. Yeah, you really stumped me.
But that's good. That means you have a lot of great shows to choose from.
Okay, I've got...
Or like a top 3 maybe?
I want to give you like a top 3 almost, like
solid.
definitely some memorable ones. So there's one for sure. It was when I was touring with Hozier earlier this year, and he played on the main stage at Bonnaroo, and he had like a 7 or 8 o'clock set. And I remember being on the stage, or like having my camera filming, and then filming behind Andrew as he's walking on stage. And I remember just seeing like a sea of like 80 or 90,000 people. And the stage was so big that we're still walking, I'm sitting, I'm kind of holding the camera up. I'm like, oh my God, like this can't be real. So that was definitely, that show was definitely top 3 for me, for sure. There's, oh man, there's one with this artist, Jade Bird, and there's a couple of good ones with her. But there's one specifically before I did any actual tour work with her, and it was like my first like 10-day run with her, and it was in this town called Pioneer Town in California. And I remember it wasn't even like a proper headline show. It was just like a couple of artists playing, and like she just ended up such a close and intimate show. And I remember like this girl like coming up to Jade like after the show, and she was like sobbing her eyes out. And she had never seen her perform ever. She didn't even know who she was, and she was like, your music brought me so close or whatever. And I remember like filming the entire thing and getting it on tape, and I was like, this is so crazy, this is insane. And I remember that show really sticking with me.
Really cool.
And then last, there's a show that I had with Robert DeLong, and it was in Kansas City, Missouri at the Record Bar, because I remember that's where I got one of my favorite photos, like this triple exposure photo
that's so cool.
that I had gotten. Yeah, so my top 3, I think.
Yeah, that's a great list. You got a lot going on. So you are name dropping all of these like really cool people.
Sure.
And you just started taking pictures like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
How did you get from A to B?
I'll tell you exactly how. So long story short, it was, like a 5-year journey of just intense work, like just working hard relentlessly every day and trying to figure out certain goals of how I could get myself into a position of touring, kind of how I briefed you on earlier, like, oh, like what else could I do? Like, oh, I should start doing photos more. I could sell merch, and like anything that I could really do, right? So I keep mentioning Robert DeLong a lot because he was kind of a big factor in how I was able to really, kickstart my whole career. But long story short, I was basically like, rock bottom. This was after I graduated. I wasn't really going anywhere. I was like, I had my own place in Austin, but I wasn't really like, again, I wasn't really going anywhere. I was exactly. I was just barely like making it every month.
Post-grad.
And I get a call from my former boss, and at Glassnet Records, where Robert is signed to, and he's basically like, hey, like, Robert has this new song with K-Flay out, and they have this giant music video, and it's all like visual effects heavy, et cetera, et cetera. They need to film it in front of a green screen with this camera, and we need to get a studio, and Robert's gonna come down to Texas for 3 days and like perform the song live with K-Flay for 3 of these shows. Do you think while he's down here you can shoot the music video? And I was like, yes, I can do that. When is it, like in a month from now? And he's like, oh no, it's in like 5 days.
Solid.
So I needed to like get that together. So long story short, I pulled that operation together, and I basically second unit directed and co-produced the Favorite Colors Blue music video with Robert DeLong and K-Flay. And while I was doing that, I was shooting a BTS video with my camera just to make it, because that's kind of what I was always drawn to. That's always what I wanted to do. So when I made this video, it was like a 5 or 6 minute video of just Robbie and like Christine basically like hanging out backstage or whatever during these shows, and like a little bit of the music video, BTS or whatever. I sent it to the label, and I was like, hey, I made this. If you guys want to use it, great. If not, no sweat. And they got back to me and they're like, wow, this is so great. Can you do this for one of our other artists? And that's how I got in touch with Jade Bird. And then, so that 10-day stunt earlier that I was talking to you about with Jade Bird, when I went out with her for 10 days, I made the same thing, and I made this video called the Somewhere American Video Diary, Tour Dog Video Diary or whatever. And I made that. And when I made that, it basically led to my fall tour with Jade. And then as soon as that fall tour ended, Robert started touring again. And guess who he's opening for? AJR.
Wow.
And so then by the end of that run with AJR, they were very gracious enough to offer me to come out on this tour that I'm on right now. And then following the spring, Jade, you know, asked me to come out on the road again because she's opening up for Hosier. And by the end of that run, Hosier asked if I wanted to come out for the summer. And so it kind of just, you kind of have these, it just kind of didn't stop. And you kind of have these building blocks where it just was like, okay, cool. Like now I'm really going, and now my work is like kind of going a million miles an hour.
That's
so
crazy. How do you like deal with that? Because I feel like it's a lot in like a short amount of time.
I don't know.
Or you don't do
I don't know if I
That's
still feel
also-
like I've like thoroughly processed it yet. I feel like I just kept going, and I just didn't look back. Like I just kind of kept my head down. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna keep working, and I'm just not gonna stop, and I'm just gonna put my work out there and see what happens.
Do you have everything lined up for like a next tour, or are you still just, like,
So for sure in February, for the month of February, I'll be with Jade in Europe, and then most of next year.
Speaking of like next things, is there like an artist or a band that you're like, this is like the goal, or like what's a goal that you're currently like trying to work towards? Because you seem like a very goal-oriented person.
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna not to sound like a boring adult here, but like my main goal for this year is to pay off my student debt.
Nice. Did that happen?
It's,
or is it really close?
I think I'll be able to by the end of this year. If not the full thing, I'll be able to get like a really good chunk out of it.
Yeah.
And then from there, I don't know, because this was always like, I told myself the whole goal was to just tour once, and that was it. Like I was gonna move back to Austin. I was gonna find a job, like as an assistant editor or just literally anything to do with cameras or whatever. And obviously that's not how things panned out. Like I just kept doing it. So I don't know what the goal will be after I pay off my student loans. I have some like minor goals. Or some short-term goals that I have. Like I recently started up a YouTube channel, and like I've put out a couple of videos out there. So whoever's watching this, if you want to check it out, just at Austin Rolla or whatever. Yeah, I guess as far as like short-term goals, started up a YouTube channel kind of dedicated to the world of like tour photography, concert photography, that whole thing. Because I feel like I don't really see that a whole lot in the YouTube world. I feel like I don't see a whole lot of like tour photographers that I follow like share like personal stories or share certain ways of like, hey, like this is what I did to get started. You know, you can reach this goal by A, B, C, et cetera, or just sort of give your 2 cents or whatever, because it is, obviously it's a really hard thing to sort of get yourself into and fully involved with, and by any means like do it as a full-time career, because there has to be like more than one artist that you work with. But I feel like, I have a little bit of experience that I can like shed some light into it. So yeah, that's like a short-term goal that I've kind of been trying to, get myself into.
For sure. So speaking of concert photographers that you like, do you have any off the top of your head that you're like, these are my people?
There's this the photographer for Tornado Pilots. His name is Brad Heaton. I follow his work.
So talented.
Yeah, I follow his work religiously. Yeah. As well as Mark Eshelman, who does all like the documentary work for Tornado Pilots.
Yeah.
I follow his work.
That whole team is just like really great.
It's those guys are absolutely unreal. And then a good friend of mine, Hannah Edelman, she's on tour with K-Flay right now, actually. And I've been a big fan of her work even before, since she had started touring recently, when she was just trying to, get into the touring world or whatever, or, share some of her concert photography or just some of her regular photography on it, because she's more than just a concert photographer. But her work is pretty great. I follow her stuff also pretty religiously.
I feel like I probably should ask this in the video. What do you shoot on?
I use a Canon 5D Mark IV, and I use that mainly for photos with a little bit of video, and then I use a Sony A7S II a lot for video, and then a little bit of photo. Catherine Powell, she's Casey Musgraves' photographer. I love her stuff.
Yeah, she's great. I just saw Casey on Friday. She was awesome.
Anna Lee, she's at Anna Lee Media. I don't know if that she does a lot of stuff with. She's on tour with X Ambassadors right now. She toured a lot with Walk the Moon and Mr. Wives. Her work is really great, and she's a really nice person. Yeah. There's somebody by the name of Sydney Golick who I follow right now, and she's on tour with Hosier right now. Cool. She's a great gal, and her work is great. Christian Cherney, who was also Hosier's photographer. And he's a great dude. His work is really phenomenal. There's this person by the name of Omari Spears. He's he's not, I don't know if he's actually gone on tour like a real tour or whatever. He's a concert photographer from Boston, and a lot of his stuff is just like underground basement kind of shows.
Yeah.
Like you can kind of see. Let me find like a really good photo. He's got some really good ones in here, like things like this,
Yeah,
where it's really
like
just like,
experimental.
yeah, super experimental and gritty, and super black and white, like just things like this. Like it's just
so cool.
yeah, like this
So
kind of
cool.
work is so good.
Yeah.
Oh man, who else?
That was more than I was expecting, so
Okay,
you
cool. I'll
passed.
give
A
you-
plus.
yeah.
Okay, I guess to close it out,
Sure.
I feel like you are very passionate.
That was Siri. No more Siri.
We're good. Cool.
No more Siri.
Like I was saying, I feel like you're like super passionate about helping like other people, other photographers and videographers like get into this. So like,
Yeah.
what is some advice that you wish you had heard when you were like 2 years ago, you were starting out? What would you tell yourself? Like how to get where you are now?
I feel like there's so many little things that I thought I would want to say. Alarm. First Siri. Now
We're
the
just
alarm
like
clock.
killing
yeah,
it
I know.
today.
We're killing it right now. Oh, man, I feel like there's so many little things that I wish I could say, and I don't know how much it would actually help. But one thing for sure is to not compare yourself to others. And when I say that, I think it's important to recognize other artists' work. I think it's important to understand what other people are putting out into the world, and I think it's healthy to see like, okay, like this person is doing this, and that person is doing that, et cetera, et cetera. But I think there's a fine line between appreciating someone else's work and comparing your work to that person. Because if you sort of get into that mental state, you sort of get funneled into like, oh man, like my work isn't good enough, or like I can't do that, like I might as well not even try.
Right.
And then if you don't try, then
Nothing happens.
nothing happens, right? No action has taken place.
Right.
That would be like my main biggest thing is to not compare your work to others. You just have to compare yourself to what you did yesterday.
Yeah.
Almost. How could I get a little bit better? I don't mean to sound cheesy, but to not to like not quit, please, like don't quit. Like if this is genuinely something that you want to do, it's genuinely something that you want to chase, just know that it can absolutely happen. I struggled for a really long time trying to get into this, and I'm really fortunate enough that my parents and a lot of my good friends, really supported me. But there were a few times where like my parents or some of my friends would be like, hey, like this whole idea of like touring sounds really bohemian, like is this something you could really make a career out of? And even if you did do one tour, like is that like a lot of money or whatever? But like if this is something you really want to do, I mean, you got to put all your chips on the table. Like you got to really go for it. And I don't know if I can like guarantee to every single person that it can work, but it'll happen to those who really want it. If that's like again,
No,
I don't mean to sound cheesy, but like
that.
I'm coming from someone that wanted it so bad for such a long time, and now that I'm actually doing it, it's weird to look back and think like it wasn't too long ago where I was just sitting in my room after I graduated college, like not really doing anything,
Yeah.
and like this being what I wanted to do. So please don't give up.
Well,
if that's not too cheesy,
No.
like is that all right?
No, I feel like most creatives, we're all like
like-
pretty cheesy, but it's like it's real like authentic advice.
I get really cheesy about this stuff, and like kind of you're saying, I'm really passionate about this kind of stuff, and
for
like
sure.
I however I can try to help people get into this, I will 100% always try to do that anytime that I can.
Well, I feel like that's like a pretty good ending point. Is there
Awesome.
any last minute things that you're like, I need to tell YouTube, 20,000 people? What do you want 20,000 people to know?
Holy
Or-
crap! Subscribe to her channel or keep subscribing to her channel and like all of her stuff.
And
all of Jenna's
same
stuff.
to him.
Yeah.
Right back at you. Thank you. This
Yeah.
has been Austin Rolla. You can follow him on Instagram and YouTube and all the things. And I'm Jenna, and I'm gonna see AJR later tonight. So see you guys later. Bye.